Welcome to today's edition of the Statler Financial Radio Show. Your financial security is our business. Have a question for the team? Call today, 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188.
Between up and down markets, the risk of inflation and rising prices, planning for retirement can feel endurance test. Can your retirement plan stand up to the stress? Well, we're going to find out here on the show. Welcome, everyone, to the Statler Financial Radio Show. Today, Phillip Statler, president and founder of Statler Financial Services, is here with me to break down some of the biggest stressors on your retirement plan and share actionable steps to help you stay on track. Phillip, welcome to the show. How are you feeling today?
Hey, I'm doing well. Danielle, good to be here. And I think this topic is a big one, especially with a lot of what we've seen lately of the ups and downs of the market. Tariff talk today, no tariffs tomorrow, all of that stuff adds into what we're going to talk about today.
Phillip, that's right. I'm so excited to get into our conversation today. There's so many things that can take a toll on a retirement plan. So let's start with this. What are some of the biggest financial stressors that people should be aware of?
Well, I think there's probably three main ones that I would say, and maybe a fourth one added in there, but market swings that can impact investment returns. The ups and downs of the market, they can be very impactful and people need to be aware, and they can stress people out. Inflation has become a big one the last 2 years now, as we've seen purchasing power dwindle. Money stays the same, but it doesn't go as far. And then economic slowdowns. And those economic slowdowns affect jobs and income sources. And so that can be stressful for folks who are trying to get ready to retire, right? That 5-year window before we retire, if we get laid off or something happens to our job, that can be stressful in planning out our retirement. And let me just throw a fourth one kind of in there. And that's, the possibility of outliving our money. Longevity can really stress people out a lot of times, Danielle.
Phillip, you're right. Market swings can definitely feel overwhelming. And so one of the questions that come to mind is, how can retirees or even those near retirement handle some of this?
Well, I think there's a couple things that they can do. The first one is, you got to balance your portfolio between growth and stability. The closer we get to retirement, the more we need to lean towards stability. And so I always say there's two things that when it comes to diversification. We need to diversify between growth and stability is the first thing we need to diversify through. And then the growth part of the portfolio needs to be diversified even more so that we can help offset the ups and downs in the market a little bit. So that's one of the big things I think people need to do. The second is stick to a long-term strategy instead of thinking in short-term changes, right? I mean, typically we saw it in different impacts. COVID, we saw the market drop significantly but bounce right back. In 2008, we saw the financial crisis. It wasn't a slowdown. It was a down that took almost 18 months to get from top to bottom. And it took another almost 2 years to get back up to where we were. So it was a slow thing, but over time, those long-term strategies work. It's the short term that sometimes we need to remember that these aren't short-term things. We need to look at the long haul. And then the last thing I would say is that you need to keep a mix of diversified investments to help reduce the overall risk of our portfolio, Danielle.
And, another thing that comes to mind, Phillip, is inflation. It's a big concern. It's been coming down lately, but there's no telling when it will go back up. So what's the best way to help protect retirement income from rising costs? Because retirement income, it's the main thing that we need to last throughout our retirement. So what's the best way to help protect that?
Well, we need to look at a couple things, and it starts with what do we include in our portfolio? We need to include investments that are going to grow over time, like stocks, like real estate. Those things have stood the test of time over a long period of time, right? They continue to move upward over that longer period of time, and that's what we need to remember when it comes to rising costs is those two key things. And then we need to make sure that we've built a steady income stream. And that may be using dividends in our portfolio. It may mean that we've used some annuities in there to create some monthly income that we can't outlive. But we need to have an income stream that we know is going to give us consistent income year over year. And I think the last thing we have to look at is we have to reassess. You need to reassess your financial plan regularly to help ensure that it accounts for inflation. Don't just set it and forget it. We need to take a look at it, pull that plan out once a year and see, are we on track? What do we need to adjust? And make sure that we're getting that done, Danielle.
And what about the economic downturns, Phillip? How can retirees feel financially steady, especially during tough times? I know a lot of people have questions, but let's talk about this. The economic downturns. What would you say to retirees that are questioning and trying to figure out what could I do to sustain during retirement?
Well, I think we look at a couple things. One is we're a big advocate of maintaining an emergency cash fund to cover those unexpected situations. And it should be enough that, hey, if the roof blows off, I need to get it done real quick before insurance can pay me, I can do it. So what does that mean in your life is what we would look at. Is that 20,000? Is that 30,000? Is it 50,000? Nobody that I've seen, and I've been doing this for a long time now, has ever needed more than $50,000 in an emergency fund. Typically, we'll see people in that 25 to 30,000 range for emergency situations. The other thing we need to do is we need to focus on consistent, reliable income sources. Building that income plan to make sure that we've got that money coming in month after month. And lastly, adjust spending and investment strategies when we need to stay on track. So sometimes we've got to adjust. And sometimes that means we're going to have to cut spending. Sometimes we're going to have to change our investment strategies to make sure that we're getting to where we need to be. And Danielle, all that we're talking about today uniquely is why I developed the core retirement design to help people design that retirement they always dreamed of. We look at those three main things when it comes to retirement: risk in your portfolio, taxes, which we haven't even talked about yet, and then income, which is a big deal for retirees. We want to make sure we've got the income in place. Folks, to get started on your core retirement analysis, give us a call today at 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188.
We'd like to remind you that there's no cost, there's no obligation to talk with Phillip and his team at Statler Financial Services. In case you missed that number, 863-877-1188. That's 877-1188. Definitely call now. Do not wait. Now, if you're tuning in, we're talking about major stressors on retirement plans. Now, Phillip, you've talked about putting a retirement plan through a stress test. I know usually we like to say, if you're stressed, you go to therapy. But if you're stressed about your financial plan, this is where a financial advisor comes in. So talk to us about, what does that mean? What's a stress test on your retirement plan?
Well, stress test does just that, Danielle. It takes the portfolio that we have and the income we're taking off of it, and it runs a lot of what ifs. What if COVID happens? What if we go through a financial crisis? What if we have another .com bubble? What if? And it runs to see, if that happened, would your portfolio, given the amount of money you're taking out to live off of, will it last as long as you need it to? And that's very important as we look at our financial plans and our income plan, to make sure that it's going to last as long as we need it to. A lot of people get short-sighted and think, well, I'm only going to live to 80, or I'm going to live to 85. Folks, there's a good chance that if you're a married couple, there's a good chance one of you will live to 90 or 95. And so we need to plan out that long in advance. The other thing I think we need to look at is, would your plan hold up in these very tough conditions? And we don't want to be in one of those hope for the best and let that go. We want to hope for the best, but folks, we need to prepare for the worst. We want to make sure that whatever we've put in place is going to weather the storms that may come our way when it comes to retirement.
And Phillip, let's take it a step further. What conditions are you testing in that stress test process?
Well, we're looking at economic recessions. What happens if we have a recession? What happens if we have a major market correction or volatility or a bear market for that matter? That goes back to the COVID deal, or goes back to economic and market volatility goes back to 2008 when we really hit the recessionary time period and fell into that bear market. It takes into consideration policy changes. We've got a policy change now as far as tariffs go with President Trump. Well, that's a big shift in policy. And so we want to make sure that our portfolio is going to withstand that test. And then lastly, global uncertainty. And we've seen that, right? We've seen the Ukraine and Russia war. We've seen all kinds of things that have happened to give us global uncertainty. These tariffs would be considered some global uncertainty. And we just need to make sure that we've got those things built into our plan.
And what would you recommend for anyone listening who isn't sure that their plan could handle this major stress?
Well, two things. One, let's make sure we have a plan in place, right? Because if you have a plan in place, let's look at it and make sure that it can handle this stress. But my fear, Danielle, because statistically, less than 30% of the folks out there have any kind of plan in place. We need to get a plan, an income plan in place to make sure that you can weather these storms in retirement. If you're feeling uneasy about your financial stressors like market volatility or rising inflation, folks, you're not alone. The reality is these challenges aren't just possibilities. They're certainties. They'll come eventually, but there's the upside. You don't have to face it without a plan. With the right approach, you can preserve your retirement and maybe even seize new opportunities along the way. That's where we have a solid written retirement strategy income plan in place. And folks, that's why I developed the Core Retirement Design. We'll help you safeguard your savings and from the impacts of inflation and ensure that your money's going to last over time. Build a resilient portfolio to help you weather the market swings and downturns so that you can stay on track through retirement. Lastly, address some big picture risks like rising healthcare, potential tax increases that may catch you off guard if you're not looking for them. Folks, don't wait for these stressors to impact your retirement. The ideal time to prepare is now. Reacting to challenges after they occur can lead to costly mistakes. Instead, folks, let's take a proactive step today. Give us a call and let's walk through our core retirement analysis. Give us a call at 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188. It's a 30-minute phone call where we'll make sure that you're on track for the retirement you always dreamed of. That's our core retirement analysis. Give us a call today, 863-877-1188.
Like Phillip said, there is no cost, there's no obligation. The time is now to get answers to your retirement questions. In case you missed that number again, 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188. Stay with us because I've got questions, you've got questions, we've all got questions. But coming up next, Phillip is going to be answering some of his mailbag questions that he gets every week. Stay with us. You're listening to the Statler Financial Radio Show.
Turn your plans of yesterday into yes today. Don't wait another day for a routine checkup of your retirement plans. Call Statler Financial Services, 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815.
Who likes uncertainty? Wall Street certainly doesn't. With fears of a potential recession and partisan politics, there's a lot of uncertainty right now. What will your future look like? Will your taxes go up? Will your savings go down? Here in the Sebring area, financial advisor Phillip Statler and the team at Statler Financial Services have seen uncertainty come and go. Phillip can help you create a plan designed to preserve your finances in uncertain times. And it's not a matter of if those uncertain times will show up, but when. Call 863-877-1188 now to meet with Phillip Statler and the team at Statler Financial Services. Call 863-877-1188 and schedule your visit today. 863-877-1188. Advisory services offered through Second Half Financial Partners, LLC, a SEC-registered investment advisor. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Time to retire right. This is the Statler Financial Radio Show.
Welcome back into the Statler Financial Radio Show. I'm your host, Danielle J. Martin, alongside Phillip Statler of Statler Financial Services. We're here to talk to you now about taxes in retirement. You know, many people assume that their taxes will go down once they stop working. While this might be true for some of you, for many, taxes could actually become one of your biggest expenses in retirement. Phillip, why do so many people underestimate their tax liability in retirement?
Well, I think a lot of times people think that because they retired, they're going to spend less money and they're going to need less money. And what we have found is that that's not necessarily true. Actually, when people stop working, they want to do other things, right? They have hobbies that want to they want to enjoy, they want to travel. And so those things actually keep expenses relatively high, pretty consistent with what they used to have when they were working. The other thing is that one of the places that most people take income from in retirement, because it's where most of the money's been saved, is in their 401k or their IRAs. And so what happens is that money, nobody's paid tax on that money. So it's 100% taxable. Another thing that people think, Danielle, is that, hey, my Social Security is a tax-free benefit. Well, for some people, that may be true. But for most of us out there, that is not going to be a fact. Most people are going to pay some tax on their Social Security. As a matter of fact, it can get as high as 85% of your Social Security can become taxable. And people don't figure that into the process when they start taking money out of their retirement accounts. And then there's obviously fewer deductions in retirement than what there were when you were working.
You know, understanding these tax realities is really crucial for retirees, Phillip. So how can unexpected taxes in retirement impact even someone's overall financial stability and planning?
Well, I think one of the things that we need to look at is when we're talking about taxes in retirement is that you have to realize that money that's sitting in your 401k or your IRA, it's not all yours. Part of it's Uncle Sam's. The problem is we don't know how much is going to be his until we file our tax return. And so it can be a problem when we take out too much. It can really push us into a higher tax bracket. And so, you know, Uncle Sam ends up being our partner in those accounts. And the other thing we look at is that your money, because you're having to pay taxes, might not last as long because you have to pull out more to pay the taxes. I mean, I have clients that, hey, look, I need 10 grand. Well, that's what they need. So we have to bump that number up to compensate for the tax liability that's going to come along with it. And typically that's going to be 20%. And so that gets to be a huge deal. The more and more money you take out, the higher your taxes are going to be. And this is one I think a lot of people don't really think about, Danielle, is that when your spouse passes away, the surviving spouse's income often will fall because they lose some Social Security benefits. But get this, their tax rate will actually increase due to now not filing jointly, but filing single. And so that puts them in a higher tax bracket. And then for the other folks out there, because the Secure Act was passed, it eliminated our ability to stretch out your IRA. It used to be you could stretch it out over your lifetime. Now, that's not the case. If you're not a spouse, then you have to take the money out of that inherited IRA by the end of the 10th year. That can be a huge tax bill that you're laying on your beneficiaries without even knowing about it. Folks, this is all why I created the Core Retirement Design, to help people design that retirement they always dreamed of. We look at three key aspects when we head into retirement. One is risk. How much risk do you have in your portfolio versus how much risk should you have in that portfolio? What I find is about 60% of the folks out there have too much risk in their portfolio. About 20% don't have enough risk in their portfolio. And there's about 20% or so that have it just right. Don't assume that you're in that 20% that have it right. Get a plan. Make sure that you are in the right spot. The second thing we look at in our core retirement design is taxes. We want to make sure folks are paying the least amount of taxes possible in retirement. And the third aspect of our core retirement design is designing an income plan for you to make sure that your money lasts as long as you need it to. Folks, to get started with your core retirement design, give us a call at 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188 to schedule your core retirement analysis.
If you have any questions about your own retirement plan or even taxes specifically, do not hesitate to give Phillip and his team a call. That number again is 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188. You know, Phillip, it's easy to see why so many retirees could be caught off guard, especially by taxes. But is there really anything that people can do to reduce their tax burden in retirement?
Well, there are, but here's the deal. Tax preparation is like a Band-Aid. It focuses on saving tax dollars for this year. And that's great. But here's what I got to say. Is that tax planning, it's the long game. Mm-hmm. It's not a short game. Consider your entire retirement journey and making decisions now, not for today, but for to have the most tax efficient retirement throughout all of those years. So the goal of tax planning is to help you maximize your retirement income and the legacy you leave behind to your beneficiaries, all in the process of eliminating and minimizing as much as we can when it comes to your tax burden.
You know, Phillip, most people believe that taxes are incredibly complex and, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by all the rules and regulations. So could you do something like a retirement tax assessment for us so people can understand?
Absolutely. It's one of the things we do at Statler Financial. It's part of our actual core retirement design. I made sure that it became the one of the legs of that whole stool is tax planning. Because we want to make sure that folks pay the least amount of taxes possible in retirement. And it takes planning. It takes the ability to look forward and to know that, hey, I think taxes are not going to be lower in the future. They're going to be higher in the future. And we need to make some changes in order to make that happen. I mean, when I look at the whole situation of taxes, I can't imagine them being any lower than what we see today, Danielle.
That's right. And I know navigating taxes in retirement can really be tricky because there are many potential pitfalls. So let's go into even what are some common mistakes that you would say many people make when they're trying to manage their taxes in retirement, especially on their own?
Well, I think a lot of times it comes back to remembering that your IRA or your 401k is not all yours. You got to share it with Uncle Sam. And one of the big mistakes I see all the time is that folks are going to retire and then they're going to pay off all their debts because they're going to take a big chunk out of their 401k or their IRA to pay off all that stuff, which sounds good in theory. But what happens is it bumps people up, sometimes not just one tax bracket, but two tax brackets. So now, instead of being in that 12% tax bracket, they're in like a 24% tax bracket. They've doubled the amount of taxes they're going to pay in retirement. And so I think that's one of the big things is that making sure that when you decide to pull money out, that you're really and truly looking at all the repercussions, because that has to be one of the biggest things I see. And just a little caveat here is that, and we don't think about this at all either, when it comes to the Affordable Health Care Act, if you're not on Medicare and you're covered by the Affordable Care Act and you take out too much money, guess what? You have to pay back that credit that you got for your health insurance. Folks, that can be devastating. I have seen people have to pay back tens of thousands of dollars because they took too much out of their retirement account. And you have to take $1 too much and you have to pay it all back. This is why planning is so important when it comes to taxes in retirement. It's a big deal. And I think we forget about that. I think the other thing that we look at and we don't think about a lot when it comes to taxes in retirement is the taxes we're going to pay on our Social Security. We forget that we might have to pay some tax on that money that we got. We assume that it's going to be tax-free money. And that's just a bad assumption. We don't know how much tax we will have to pay on our Social Security. Maybe it's zero, but very likely it's going to be somewhere between 50 and 85% of your Social Security is going to end up being taxable. Folks, all of this to say, the reason that I created the Core Retirement Design was to help people with taxes, with income, and with risk. Give us a call at 863-877-1188 to schedule your Core Retirement Analysis. It's simple. It's a 30-minute phone call where you and I will discuss where you're at currently, what you're doing for retirement, and how close you are to retirement. And we'll determine if you're on the right path. If you are, great. If you're not, maybe I can give you some key elements that you can tweak in your own plan to make sure that you get the retirement you always dreamed of. Again, to schedule your Core Retirement Analysis, it's 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188.
If you have any questions about your own retirement plan or even taxes in retirement, this is your opportunity right now to schedule a call with Phillip and his team by calling that number 863-877-1188. Again, that number is 863-877-1188. You know, with growing concerns that tax rates will rise in the future due to the rapidly increasing national debt and other pressures, now might be the time to be proactive with tax planning. We're going to continue this conversation with Phillip right here. You're listening to the Statler Financial Radio Show. We'll be right back.
Needing a second opinion on your retirement plan or to see if you're paying more than your fair share to Uncle Sam? Schedule your complimentary visit today. Text VISIT to 863-877-1188. That's VISIT to 863-877-1188.
Surprise parties can be fun.
Surprise!
Financial surprises, not so much, especially when you're retired, like finding out you owe more in taxes than you thought you would, or having to go back to work to make ends meet. Maybe you'll be okay, but why not double check just to be sure? Call Phillip Statler at Statler Financial Services and schedule a no-cost retirement double check at 863-877-1188. Phillip and his team have seen their fair share of surprises over the years and know how to help you avoid them. Call 863-877-1188 to schedule your no-cost retirement double check with Phillip Statler at Statler Financial Services. Don't let a financial surprise derail your retirement dreams. Call 863-877-1188 now. That's 863-877-1188. You can also visit StatlerFinancial.com for more info. Advisory services are offered through Second Half Financial Partners, LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.
I want to help you understand some things. Number one, timing of your RMD, because they could potentially push you into a higher tax bracket. Imagine how fast your savings could shrink if you rack up penalties along with taking regular withdrawals and paying taxes.
Time to retire right. This is the Statler Financial Radio Show.
You know, interest payments on the ballooning national debt now exceed every other individual budget item except Social Security. Given the expected continued growth of government debt, many believe that it's reasonable to conclude that tax rates will rise in the future. Welcome, everyone, back to the Statler Financial Radio Show. We are continuing the conversation here with Phillip Statler of Statler Financial Services about tax planning and what to keep in mind. So, Phillip, what do you think about this? Given the expected continued growth of government debt, what do you think? What should we keep in mind with possible tax raises in the future?
Well, I think we have to realize that government spending is definitely out of control. And so that means taxes are probably going to go up. Now, it's really not a guess. It's just math. They like to spend money. It doesn't matter who's up there. The other thing I want you to remember is Social Security and Medicare are projected to become insolvent in less than 10 years. Now, folks, if folks can't get their Social Security and Medicare, what do you think is going to happen in this country? There's going to be a huge revolt. So believe me, they are going to get that solved before they become insolvent, which means you and I are going to pay more in taxes in order for those benefits to go out. Think about this as well. By 2030, 20%, that's 1 in 5 Americans, will be over the age of 65, putting an increased strain on our federal and our state budgets. And then remember, the 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act legislation, referred to usually as Trump tax cuts, they expire in 2025. That means at the end of next year, they're gone. 2026, we go back to the old rules, the old tax rates. Folks, I don't think people have really made the calculation of what that's going to mean to them when it comes to their tax bill. But all of these things are reasons why taxes are going to go up. And well, we already know in 2026, they're going to go up unless something gets done. And I just don't see that happening, Danielle.
You know, Phillip, it certainly seems that there are compelling reasons to expect that tax rates could increase in the future. But Phillip, how might these tax increases, how could these impact individuals who have stopped working or they're now retired as well?
Well, again, retirees, where are they going to get their money from? You know, they get their Social Security and maybe they get a pension, but typically they're going to take money out of their retirement accounts to cover, their expenses. Well, every time we take money out of a retirement account, Uncle Sam is there. He's a partner. He wants his share every time you take money out. And the issue is we don't know how much he's going to want until we file our tax return. So because we have that increasing tax burden, we have a potential of depleting our savings faster than what we would have without those higher taxes. The other thing we look at is that, everybody's savings is in tax deferred accounts, IRAs, 401ks, and the larger withdrawals to pay taxes leads to even higher taxable income. Most people will call and say, hey, I need $5,000. I need $10,000. That's not the gross amount. That's what they need in their account. Well, now you got to tack on the tax, whether that's 15%, 20%, 25%, whatever tax rate they're in. So that increases the amount of money we have to take out of those accounts. The other thing we look at is higher tax rates mean that Social Security benefits being taxed at a higher rate. That's a big deal. And then higher taxes could also affect our ability to leave a legacy to our heirs, as more and more money will be needed to cover just the sure minimum tax liabilities that we're going to have.
You know, Phillip, in the previous segment, we briefly discussed the importance of integrating tax planning within a person's overall retirement plan. So now can you discuss some specific tax management strategies that we could incorporate into such a plan and keep with us the rest of our lives?
Absolutely. The IRS tax code, it's a rule book that, if correctly followed, can potentially lead to several opportunities for some long-term management of taxes throughout your retirement. Remember, there's no silver bullet when it comes to taxes. And anybody that tells you there are, be very cautious. So here's some things that you can do. Diversifying taxes by spreading retirement savings across accounts with different tax treatments. So that means that you're going to have your IRAs and your 401ks, but you're going to have your non-qualified accounts. Non-qualified accounts get taxed as you take money out. And so you want to make sure that you've got those diversified across all aspects. Secondly, we want to use tax loss harvesting to reduce the amount of capital gains that you may be subject to. increasing tax deductions using a charitable trust. Again, it takes some planning, but it can be done. Another area that's very popular, we do it all the time here at Statler Financial, is Roth conversions, making sure that we are maximizing the use of our tax brackets. Man, if you're in a 10 or 12% tax bracket and you're not maxing it out by doing Roth conversions, then you're leaving money on the table. If you're not paying any taxes at all, you're in a 0% tax bracket, and you have a retirement account, you are missing a huge opportunity to convert some of those monies out of your IRA into Roth IRAs where they will grow tax-free. And then the last thing you need to look at, that a lot of people don't use these either, is qualified distributions and using your IRA for charitable donations. And then make sure you're balancing out where you're taking your distributions from, whether that's a Roth or traditional, and limiting how much you have to pay in taxes through that diversification as well. Folks, listen, all of this wrapped up is our core retirement design, where we'll help you design that retirement you always dreamed of. Give us a call at 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188 to schedule your core retirement analysis.
Do you have any final tax planning tips for anyone that we could take away from today?
Again, I think the number one thing is that to remember that the 2017 Tax Cut and Job Acts expires at the end of next year. And in 2026, we go back to the old rules. And so we do have this year and next year where we're going to be in a lower tax bracket. And I would encourage you to take advantage of this little window we have. Yeah, in 2026, could they change the rules and could they change the law to continue? They could. Will they? Think of how much debt we've taken on in the last 4 years. Can they really afford to reduce taxes? I know you hear a lot of rhetoric out there right now during this election year of how they're going to lower your taxes. Folks, the debt is higher and higher, the highest we've ever seen. The interest payment alone is going to kill us. Folks, we need to be proactive. You need to put yourself in the best position you can be when it comes to taxes in retirement. And again, that's what we do. I mean, that's the basis of our whole planning process, is that three-pronged approach: taxes, risk, income. Those are the three things that you really need to focus on when it comes to your retirement and income planning. That's why I developed the core retirement design. Give us a call at 863-877-1188. Our core retirement design is, we're going to look at the risk you have in your current portfolio, and we're going to measure that against your risk number to make sure that the two things line up. Here's what I have found in the past is that about 60% or so have too much risk in their portfolio for retirement. There's about 20% to 25% of the folks out there, they don't have enough risk in their portfolio. And there's 10 or 15% of the folks out there, they've got enough. They've got it right. Folks, please don't assume that you're going to be the one in that 10 or 15%. Because if you're wrong, it could be devastating. Give us a call at 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188 to schedule your core retirement analysis, where we'll help you design the retirement you always dreamed of.
You want to take advantage of this offer from Phillip to make sure that you won't run out of money. You may even boost your returns over time. So simply get started today by calling Phillip and his team at 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188. We like to remind you that you don't have to plan for retirement alone. Phillip and his team are right here with you. You want to stay with us? We have more coming up right after this. We'll be right back.
Do you have a retirement plan but would like a second opinion? Call Phillip Statler today, 863-285-3815. Statler Financial Services, 863-285-3815.
Surprise parties can be fun. Financial surprises, not so much, especially when you're retired, like finding out you owe more in taxes than you thought you would, or having to go back to work to make ends meet. Maybe you'll be okay, but why not double check just to be sure? Call Phillip Statler at Statler Financial Services and schedule a no-cost retirement double check at 863-877-1188. Phillip and his team have seen their fair share of surprises over the years and know how to help you avoid them. Call 863-877-1188 to schedule your no-cost retirement double check with Phillip Statler at Statler Financial Services. Don't let a financial surprise derail your retirement dreams. Call 863-877-1188 now. That's 863-877-1188. You can also visit StatlerFinancial.com for more info. Advisory services are offered through Second Half Financial Partners, LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.
Sounds like the mailman's here.
It's time to answer questions from the Statler Financial Mailbag.
Welcome back into the Statler Financial Radio Show. I'm Danielle J. Martin alongside Phillip Statler. He is the founder and president of Statler Financial Services. So Phillip gets questions each and every week about all things retirement. So we're going to open up our Statler Financial Radio Show mailbag questions where we go over some common retirement questions. Phillip, I know you've never seen these questions before, but I'm excited to hear your insight. Are you ready?
I am ready. Let's see what the folks out there have for us today so that we can help them retire better.
That's right. Okay, so our first question comes from John from Avon Park. He says, I'm worried about being able to afford a nursing home one day. So what are some of the options for handling those types of expenses?
Well, John, there's a couple things to look at. There's the obvious answer is you can buy long-term care insurance, right? That covers nursing home care. Sometimes they even cover assisted living care. It's expensive, and it's usually now, with the way they write things now, it's usually a set period of time, maybe a 2-year benefit or a 4-year benefit. We don't see much over a 4-year benefit anymore. So that's the first one thing you can look at. The second thing you can look at is life insurance. There are some life insurance policies that will provide some long-term care benefits to you. Now, let me just say that those long-term care benefits, if you have to use them, they will reduce the death benefit. So there's some pros and cons there, but it can help. It's not, a dollar for dollar deal, but you can get some benefit there to help offset some of that cost of nursing home care. There's annuities. There are long-term care annuities that will give you some additional benefit within that annuity if you end up in a long-term care facility. There's different ways of doing that. There's some annuities that they will give you, 2 or 3 times the annuity value if you have to go into a nursing home. The one thing I would tell you is you're using your money first. The insurance company's money is going to be that second or third ring when it comes to that nursing care benefit. And then lastly is just, you use Medicaid, you do the planning, and then, if you can't afford it, then the state comes in with Medicaid and helps cover some of those costs for nursing home. It's more difficult if we're talking about assisted living when it comes to that situation. Hope that answers your question, John.
Great question from John, and thank you for your insights, Phillip. Okay, let's get to our next question from Mary from Lake Placid. She says, if we aren't sure if we're getting the right guidance to help protect our income from potential retirement risks, such as market risk, healthcare costs, taxes, and inflation, what should we do? Mary, I know you're not the only person that has this question. So, Phillip, what do you say?
Well, Mary, I would say that, one, do you have a plan? Do we have any kind of plan in place that gives you any indication that we've looked at any of these things, that it'll make up for that? Um, Most time the answer is no. And so I would say that one way is to get a second opinion, to bring it to somebody else, let them look at it, and measure the risk you have in that portfolio. And then if it's mostly IRA money, which is typical these days, what's the plan for taxes? Do we have a plan for taxes? What can we do to help offset taxes? These are things that we look at Statler Financial in our core retirement design. When we design all around those key aspects of market risk, taxes, and income. So if you don't have a plan, we'd be happy to sit down with you and look at that and see how you're situated from those different key aspects of retirement. And hopefully that helps you out, Mary.
Thank you for that question, Mary, and great insights there, Phillip. Okay, we have more questions here in our mail bag. Our next question comes from Steve from Sebring. He says, how much would you recommend that I might set aside every year for retirement if I'm planning to retire in 10 years? Again, that question is, how much would you recommend that I set aside every year for retirement if I'm planning to retire in 10 years? Great question, Steve.
That is a very good question, Steve. It may be the wrong question, though. The question may be, how much am I going to spend when I retire 10 years from today? Because that's going to help us determine what the answer is on the other side. Because the issue is not, and we see this all the time, Steve, is people want to know, how much do I need saved up for retirement? And everybody's different. Some people are frugal. They don't spend much money. Oh, they don't need as much for retirement. Then you have people that have astronomical amount of debt. They haven't done a good job of whittling down their debt before they go into retirement. And so now they need a lot of cash flow to cover those fixed costs they have every month. And so it's hard to say, what do you need saved up without knowing your exact circumstances? So a couple guidelines, right? Everybody seems to think they need $1 million or $1.5 million for retirement. Again, it comes down to how much are you spending. I would say that if you've got a decent Social Security, and what is decent? If it's $1,900, $2,500 a month, and you're a married couple and you both have that coming in, you might can make it on $500,000. You need a plan, Steve. That's the bottom line, is you need to sit down with a financial advisor today and plan out, what do you need to set aside over the next 10 years to have the retirement that you want, that you've always dreamed of. And again, that's what our core retirement design does. So we'd be happy to sit down with you, Steve, and put together that plan to make sure that you've got everything in order to have the retirement you always dreamed of.
Now, if you have a question of your own, you can definitely give us a call here, 863-877-1188, and we would definitely answer your show live here on air. So go ahead and submit your question, 863-877-1188. Okay, Phillip, we have time for one more question. One from Christina from Sebring. She says, can you talk more about what goes into a written financial strategy for retirement? I would like something like a checklist to help me make sure I have everything covered. We all love a checklist, Phillip. So what do you have for us?
We do. So we put together a full plan for income, right? What do we need in income? And sometimes we'll look at other little key aspects, like if we're saving for a specific, somebody wants to retire and have an RV, right? They want to buy an RV at retirement. Well, we'll plan, okay, what do we need to set aside to purchase that RV or that boat or whatever it is in that terms. But when we put together an income plan, that's exactly what we're doing. We're taking all the sources that you have for income, whether that's Social Security, whether you're going to have a pension, those type of things. Maybe you've got an annuity that you can turn on. We'll look at all of those things to see, how much income do you have? How much income do you need in retirement? And then the other question, how much do you want, right? Because need and want sometimes are really two different things. And so how much do you want in retirement to do the things that you always dreamed of? And then we look at the portfolio that you have. What do you have in investable dollars? And how much income can we generate out of that portfolio to fill the gap between those things? I would say it's simple, but it takes some work to put all those things together, to make the calculations, and to put it all down so that you know these are the things I need to do. This is what I need to save. This is what I need to get paid off. This is where I need to be when it comes time for retirement. And again, that's why we developed the core retirement design. The core retirement design is just that. It's made to help you put together those three key areas. Risk. How much risk do I have in the portfolio? Does it really match up with my risk score and where it should be? And what do I need to do to make sure it's diversified properly between growth and safety? That's the key. And then how do we further, take it in the growth side? And then what do we need in taxes? What could we do to reduce our taxes or get ourselves to the point where we may pay very little in taxes in retirement? Not just for you, but don't forget that when you pass away, somebody's still going to pay taxes on that money you left behind. And we want to reduce those taxes on your entire family line. And that's what we do in our core retirement. The last thing we do, and we've talked about this a lot today, is we put together that income plan. We're going to put together a plan so you know where your money's coming from, what that looks like, how much do I have to spend in that income. Folks, that's our core retirement design. Let us help you get started. The first is a 30-minute phone call. We call our core retirement analysis, where we make sure you're on the right track to the retirement you always dreamed of. It's a simple phone call, 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188. Just give us a call, get on the calendar. We'll give you a call. We'll talk about where you are, where you want to be, when do you want to be there? And we'll talk about the next steps after that. 863-877-1188 to get started on your core retirement analysis.
We like to remind you there is no cost, there is no obligation to sit down with Phillip and the team at Statler Financial Services. Phillip will answer all of your questions regarding your own retirement plan. This is another reminder, this is not the time to try to figure it out yourself, do it yourself. You have assistance near you. It's very simple, it's free. Give him a call, 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188. You're listening to the Statler Financial Radio Show. You'll find us here every week. We'll catch you next time. Thanks for listening. Have a great week, everyone.
Advisory services offered through Second Half Financial Partners, LLC, a SEC-registered investment advisor. The opinions voiced and information provided in this material are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine what investments are appropriate for you, please consult with a financial advisor. Second Half Financial Partners, LLC does not provide tax or legal advice. Please consult your tax or legal advisor regarding your particular situation. This radio show is a paid placement.